I felt my legs give out before I even realized what was happening. My vision blurred, sunlight through the stained glass streaking like fire across my eyes, and then, nothing. Strong hands caught me before I hit the floor. For a split second, my body didn't understand what had happened. There was no pain, no impact, just a sudden, unfamiliar stillness, like time had stalled mid-fall. My stomach lurched, my ears rang, and the world tilted at a strange angle that made me feel weightless and heavy all at once. I clutched the fabric of his jacket like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. My fingers curled instinctively, gripping tight, as if letting go meant I'd disappear completely. The material beneath my palm was warm, solid, undeniably real. That alone kept me from spiraling. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. Not just feel it, hear it. It slammed against my ribs in panicked, uneven beats, like it was trying to escape my chest. My breathing came shallow and fast, and I hated how exposed I felt, how fragile. God, this was embarrassing. "You're okay," he said. His voice was calm and low, steady in a way that didn't match the chaos in my body. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't loud. It didn't draw attention. The kind of voice that sounded like control, like certainty. The kind of voice that made my chest ache for no reason I could name. Okay. The word felt like a lie. Nothing about this felt okay. My legs were still weak, my vision still swimming slightly, my pride completely shattered. And yet, I didn't pull away. I should have. I dared to glance up, slow and cautious, like I was afraid that if I moved too fast, the world would tip again. My lashes fluttered once, twice, the effort of lifting them feeling heavier than it should have, as if gravity itself had thickened around me. The air felt dense, pressing in on my chest, making every breath deliberate instead of automatic. For a moment, my vision swam. It wasn't sudden darkness, but a soft, dizzy blur that made the edges of everything dissolve. Shapes blurred. Colors bled into one another. Light scattered across the walls, the pews, the floor, until nothing had a clear line. The air felt thick, as if the church itself had grown denser, pressing in from all sides, and I was caught in the middle of it. Every sound seemed muffled, the distant shuffle of feet, a whisper of a hymn somewhere, the quiet hum of sunlight through stained glass. Yet within the blur, there was the faint, steady pressure of something solid behind me. I focused on grounding myself, on the weight of my body, pressing against the floor beneath me, on the faint pressure of his arm behind me, the reassuring warmth that anchored me like a tether to reality, on the steady rise and fall of his chest beneath my hand. Each breath he took felt magnified, each slight shift of his body echoing against my senses. My own breathing caught in my throat, shallow, uneven, desperate to match his, to find rhythm with him. Then, at last, my eyes finally focused. His eyes were already on me. Not flicking toward me, not scanning, not hesitant. Already there. Already waiting. Already holding some invisible space that only I could enter. They weren't just watching, they were seeing. Every flutter of my lashes, every falter of my hands, every tiny tremor in my chest registered in the steady, unreadable darkness of his gaze. Dark. Unreadable. Terrifyingly close. The words felt inadequate, hollow in my head. They couldn't describe the force of his stare. It wasn't threatening, not in the conventional sense, but it carried gravity. Pull. A magnetic weight that pressed against the fragile lines of my composure. I hadn't expected that. I'd imagined surprise. Perhaps concern, a quick widening of eyes. Maybe even the awkward discomfort of a stranger suddenly responsible for someone else's vulnerability. But there was none of that. No flinching. No sharp intake of breath. No panicked flutter. No hesitation. Just this intense, unwavering focus, like he was making sure I was real. Like he was counting my breaths without moving his lips. 1, 2, steady. I felt seen in a way that was both grounding and terrifying. Like my breath, my pulse, my faint dizziness weren't mine anymore. They were measurable, observable, something he could feel as acutely as I could. The rest of the world, pews, people, church sounds, sunlight, faded into background noise. The only thing I could sense clearly was him. The closeness hit me all at once. Not gradually. Not gently. It crashed over me like a wave I hadn't anticipated, a tide that swept away all pretense, all composure, all control. It enveloped me, pressing against my skin, seeping into my bones, until my entire being was aware of his presence, his weight, his nearness. The warmth of him radiated through the thin barrier of clothing, grounding yet utterly destabilizing. I wanted to step back, to pull away, yet every instinct to retreat dissolved under the gravity of it. My hand, still resting against his chest, felt both too small and yet insistent, a fragile link to him that I couldn't sever. The solid line of his chest beneath my palm reminded me how firmly I was leaning into him. How completely my body had trusted him before my mind even had the chance to intervene. His arm was firm around my back. Steady. Secure. Holding me upright as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Not gripping, not restraining. Just there, a quiet, unyielding presence that spoke louder than words could. That presence whispered, without moving, without speaking, "You are safe here." Too close. The realization hit with physical force. My chest tightened, breath hitching in a panic I didn't entirely understand. My awareness sharpened painfully. I felt every millimeter of him through the thin fabric of clothing, the subtle curve of his arm, the faint pressure of his chest, the warmth radiating in a perfect, unsettling wave. My mind raced. Why am I here? Why am I letting this happen? And yet, even as reason screamed, my body refused to respond. I felt his stability, his control, and something in me, a quiet, dangerous longing, thrived on it. My hands flew to my mouth, one in shock, the other still clutching him without permission. I barely noticed the movement at first. It was instinctive, a reflex. My body had taken over before my mind could register what I was doing. Then my fingers tightened again. Betraying me. I was suddenly aware of everything. Every inch of space between us seemed electric. My pulse spiked, hammering against my ribs so violently I was sure he could feel it. My ears rang, my temples throbbed, and heat rushed to my face and neck, spreading like wildfire, painting me with embarrassment and something far more disorienting. Why couldn't I move? Why did I want to stay this close? Why did it feel like nothing else existed in the world except for him, my hands, and the dangerous, intoxicating pull that held me here? I tried to think. Tried to force logic into the jumble of sensations. People could see. Someone might already be watching. Every rule I'd ever made for myself screamed that this was wrong, reckless, inappropriate. But every rule clashed with the deep, primal want that had me rooted in place. My body betrayed me with every pulse, every tremor, every stolen breath I allowed myself to take in his nearness. The subtle shift of his arm as it adjusted around me, the slight, almost imperceptible movement of his thumb, was like a language in itself. Not pulling away, not closing me in further, just there. There, giving me space, giving me time. Giving me the quiet assurance that he wasn't going anywhere. That I was safe, even if my heart disagreed. I felt every hair on my skin stand at attention. Every nerve ending buzzed with heightened awareness. My stomach churned and fluttered simultaneously. My mind argued with itself in endless loops: move, stay, retreat, breathe, speak, wait, look, don't look. I noticed the weight of his breath near my ear. Faint, almost imperceptible, yet undeniable. I noticed the scent of him, something clean, warm, grounding, intertwined with the faint scent of the church, incense, sun through the stained glass. It was a combination I didn't recognize but couldn't ignore, a smell that anchored me in the moment, tying me to him in ways my mind didn't want to admit. My heart raced. Not just fast, uncontrollably, recklessly, like it had a life separate from my body. Every beat echoed in my ears. Does he feel it too? I wondered, absurdly, desperately, quietly. Does he know what this does to me? I became aware of my fingers again. One hand pressed to my mouth, the other still clutching his jacket. How long had I been holding on without realizing it? Minutes? Seconds? Hours? Time had dissolved. I tried to force them to move, to regain control. But my grip tightened again, almost instinctively, as if the very act of letting go would shatter the precarious balance of the world. I was acutely aware of the subtle thrum of tension between us. Not words, not promises, not spoken thoughts, just a raw, unfiltered presence. The quiet power of him standing there, unwavering, unshakable, holding me without needing to assert dominance, without need for ceremony. Just presence. I realized, painfully, that this was an entirely new sensation. One I had no experience with. One I hadn't trained for, hadn't read about, hadn't imagined in any real way. I was entirely, frighteningly, consumingly aware of him, and, somehow, the awareness was mutual. Every small motion, every imperceptible micro-expression on his face, every shift of weight pressed into the air around us with meaning I couldn't yet fully understand. I was learning language in silence, comprehension without words. Then my breath caught. A sudden awareness of proximity, of the fragile, electric line between our bodies, made me shiver involuntarily. The heat rising from my face became unbearable. The air felt tight, thick, the space between us charged, stretched like a rubber band pulled to its limit. And all the while, he remained steady. Watching. Calm. Certain. I wanted to retreat. Every logical part of me demanded it. But a deeper, more stubborn part of me whispered, "Stay. Don't move. Don't break this moment. Don't ruin this tether." I realized that the choice wasn't mine to make yet. My mind screamed, but my body, my treacherous, helpless, longing body, refused. The world had narrowed to him and me. The church, the pews, the light, the people around us, all vanished into insignificance. Only this closeness mattered. Only this weight, this warmth, this impossible, frightening intimacy. I didn't know how long we stayed like that. Seconds or eternity, it didn't matter. Time was irrelevant under the gravity of his focus, under the suffocating, beautiful, dangerous stillness of the moment. I barely dared to breathe. And yet every inhalation carried awareness, of him, of me, of the impossibility and fragility of what we were sharing. Every nerve ending screamed, "Pay attention." Every fiber of my being wanted to run, to hide, to erase this, yet it wanted to remain, anchored, tethered, trapped in the intensity of him. My pulse continued to spike, my grip betrayed me again, my heart pounded, my mind reeled. I realized, with a shocking clarity, that this moment, this unbearably close, impossibly intimate, terrifyingly still moment, was not something that would pass unnoticed. Not by me. Not by him. Not by the world that was slowly, inevitably, creeping back into awareness. And yet, I stayed. Rooted. Trembling. Exposed. Aware. Why am I holding him like this? The question echoed loudly in my head, sharp and accusing. I stared at the space just below his collarbone, afraid that if I met his eyes again, I'd lose whatever fragile control I had left. I wanted to pull away. I should have. Every rule I'd ever made for myself screamed that this was wrong. Inappropriate. Reckless. I wasn't supposed to be this close to anyone, let alone someone I barely knew. This wasn't who I was. This wasn't how I behaved. People could see. The thought hit me hard. A spike of self-conscious panic rushed through me. Anyone could look over. Someone might already be watching. I imagined whispers, glances, the quiet judgment of strangers who would only see what this looked like, not what it felt like. But every part of me wanted to stay. Not out of defiance. Not out of thrill. Out of something quieter and far more dangerous, relief. Stay right here, suspended in this strange, quiet moment where nothing else existed. Where the world hadn't caught up yet. Where no one had time to ask questions or form opinions. Where I wasn't the girl who fainted in church or the woman who always tried to be invisible. Right now, I was just here. Held. Seen. I can't believe you caught me, I whispered. The words trembled as they left my mouth, fragile and uncertain. My voice sounded smaller than I expected, thin and unsteady, like it didn't fully belong to me. Saying it out loud made everything real in a way I hadn't prepared for. It made the moment settle into my bones. I became painfully aware of how close my face was to his, of the faint sound of his breathing, of the way his chest rose beneath my hand. I wanted to take the words back, to swallow them before they fully existed between us. His gaze didn't waver. Not even when I spoke. You fainted, he said softly. I caught you. That's all. That's all. The phrase echoed in my head, hollow and impossible. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. Like this was some small, forgettable thing. Like my body hadn't just betrayed me in public. Like my heart wasn't still racing wildly in my chest. Like his hands weren't still on me, grounding me in a way that felt far too intimate for strangers. I could still feel the exact points of contact. The steady pressure of his arm. The warmth of his torso. The way he hadn't moved away the second I regained my balance. All of it contradicted his words. But it wasn't all. Nothing about him, or the way he made me feel, was ever just all. I could feel it in the silence that stretched between us, heavy but unbroken. Not awkward. Not rushed. Just suspended. The kind of silence that felt deliberate, like neither of us wanted to be the one to break it. In the way his thumb shifted slightly at my side. Not moving away. Not tightening. Just there. The smallest movement, almost imperceptible, but it sent a ripple through me all the same. It felt like a question without words. Like he was giving me time. Like he understood something I hadn't even figured out yet. My thoughts raced, colliding with each other in frantic bursts. Say something. Move. Apologize. Step back. Every instinct urged action, but my body remained stubbornly still, anchored by his presence. I wondered if he could feel how tense I was. How my muscles were coiled tight beneath my skin. How my breathing kept hitching despite my attempts to steady it. Are you okay? He asked quietly. The question wasn't loud enough to draw attention. It felt private, meant only for me. I think so, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure what okay meant anymore. His arm didn't loosen. Not immediately. Instead, he adjusted his stance just slightly, shifting his weight to make sure I was balanced. The movement was subtle, practiced, like he'd done this before, caught people before they fell, held them steady until the world stopped spinning. That thought unsettled me more than it should have. Who is he? The question surfaced unbidden, sharp with curiosity. I realized how little I actually knew about him. Just impressions. Just moments. Just the way he looked at me now, like I was something fragile and worth protecting. I became acutely aware of how close our faces were again. Too close. I could see the faint lines near his eyes, the concentration etched into his expression. He smelled faintly of something clean and warm beneath the sharper scent of the church air. My fingers still hadn't released his jacket. The realization embarrassed me. I forced myself to loosen my grip, though my hand lingered longer than necessary. The fabric slipped from my grasp slowly, reluctantly, as if my body was resisting the separation. There it was again, that quiet resistance. Why can't I just let go? I shifted my weight experimentally, testing my balance. His arm tensed automatically, ready to support me if I faltered. The instinctive response sent another unexpected flutter through my chest. "I can stand," I murmured, more to myself than to him. "I know," he replied. Something about the certainty in his tone made my throat tighten. He didn't sound impatient. He didn't sound doubtful. Just sure. The silence returned, thick with things unsaid. I could hear the distant murmur of the church, the shuffle of feet somewhere behind us, the faint echo of a voice, but it all felt far away. Like we were wrapped in our own pocket of stillness. I wondered what he was thinking. If he was aware of how intense this felt to me. If this was just another moment to him, another stranger he'd helped, or if he felt this strange pull too, this inexplicable awareness humming beneath the surface. My pulse finally began to slow, though it never fully settled. The dizziness faded to a faint echo, leaving behind something more dangerous in its place, clarity. And with it, the undeniable truth that this moment, this closeness, this shared stillness, had already changed something. I didn't know what yet. Only that standing here, held and seen, felt nothing like that's all. My thoughts scattered, colliding with each other. Why did I faint? Was it stress? Lack of sleep? The sudden shock of seeing him here? I didn't know which answer scared me more. "I'm sorry," I murmured, the apology automatic, ingrained. "I didn't mean to." "You don't need to apologize," he interrupted gently. Not sharp. Not annoyed. Just firm. That alone made my throat tighten. After that, he didn't leave. I expected him to step back, to hand me off to someone else, to fade into the background like a stranger was supposed to. But he didn't. He stayed close, close enough that I could still feel his warmth even when his hands finally loosened their hold. He walked me to a pew, slow and careful, matching his pace to mine like he knew my legs might still give out if I rushed. I was hyper-aware of every step, every breath, every tiny movement. My arm brushed his once, accidentally, and my skin tingled where it happened. "Tell me if you feel dizzy again," he said quietly. "I will," I replied, even though my voice barely came out. He sat beside me, not too close, not too far. Just enough space to pretend this was normal. Just enough distance to make me painfully aware of the absence of his touch. His presence was overwhelming yet grounding at the same time. Like standing too close to a fire, comforting warmth mixed with the danger of getting burned. The sunlight through the windows painted us in gold, long beams stretching across the pews, dust particles floating lazily in the air. Somewhere behind us, a hymn continued softly, the sound distant and blurred, like it belonged to another world entirely. I couldn't focus on the light. All I could think about was him. The way he sat so still, shoulders relaxed but alert. The faint crease between his brows like he was thinking about something he wasn't saying. The subtle scent of his cologne, clean, warm, faintly woody, that lingered in the space between us. Why does he smell like that? I shifted slightly, trying to ground myself, trying to remember where I was. My hands rested in my lap, fingers twisting together nervously. I felt ridiculous. Weak. Too aware of my own heartbeat. Then his hand brushed mine. Just once. "An accident," he said immediately, barely above a whisper. "Sorry." But it didn't feel like one. The contact was brief, fleeting, but it sent fire through my veins all the same. A sharp, unexpected jolt that made my breath hitch. I pulled my hand back too quickly, my pulse spiking again. It's fine," I said, too fast. Silence fell again, thicker this time. Charged. I could feel him glance at me, not staring, just checking. Like he was measuring something invisible between us. I stared straight ahead, suddenly very aware of how close our knees were, how little space separated us. Why is this making me feel like this? I swallowed hard, my thoughts spiraling. This is nothing. It means nothing. He helped you. That's it. But my body didn't believe that. My heart didn't either. "Are you sure you're all right?" he asked after a moment. "Yes," I said. Then, more honestly, "I think so." He nodded, accepting that answer without pushing. That restraint, that was what unsettled me most. He wasn't trying to impress me. He wasn't hovering. He wasn't taking advantage of the moment. He was just there. And somehow, that made everything feel more dangerous. Every Sunday after, I found myself arriving early. Earlier than I needed to. Earlier than I ever had before. I told myself it was practical, less noise, more quiet, more time to think. But the truth sat heavy in my chest, unspoken and undeniable. I came early because waiting felt better than wondering if he would show up at all. Pretending it was coincidence that I always sat where I might see him became a ritual. Third pew from the front. Left side. Close enough to notice the door without looking obvious. Far enough to convince myself it meant nothing. Pretending I didn't wait for his shadow to appear first was the hardest part. I would tell myself I was there for the service, for the silence, for the familiar comfort of the space. Yet every time the doors creaked open, my breath would hitch just slightly. Every time footsteps echoed down the aisle, my heart would lift, then sink, then steady again. Why was I like this? I hated how aware I was of my own anticipation. Hated how much power a simple possibility had over me. I'd sit there, hands folded, posture calm, face composed, while inside my thoughts spun relentlessly. If he comes, don't stare. If he doesn't, don't be disappointed. If he sits near you, act normal. He never made it easy. Some Sundays, he would arrive late, slipping in quietly like he belonged there, taking a seat just close enough to make my skin buzz. Other times, he would already be there when I arrived, leaning back casually, eyes forward, as if he hadn't noticed me at all, until I felt that unmistakable pull, that subtle awareness that told me he had. A quiet smile here. Not full. Just the smallest curve of his mouth when our eyes met briefly. Like a secret passed without words. A brush of fingers there. Never lingering. Never obvious. Just enough contact to send a rush through me that made it hard to breathe properly. Enough to make me dizzy. Enough to make me imagine things I shouldn't. I told myself it was nothing. That people smiled all the time. That accidents happened. That I was reading too much into it because my life had been too quiet for too long. But quiet didn't feel like this. This felt like standing on the edge of something and knowing that one step forward would change everything. Then one rainy afternoon, everything changed. It wasn't dramatic at first. Just inconvenient. The kind of rain that starts suddenly and doesn't care where you are or how prepared you thought you were. I was running late, shoes already damp, hair clinging to my neck, my umbrella flipping inside out in the wind like it was mocking me for trying. The street was slick, cars hissing past, the sky heavy and gray. I could feel the frustration bubbling up, the familiar sense of being slightly out of step with the world. I didn't notice him at first. Not until I reached the church steps and saw a figure standing there, unmoving, coat draped neatly over his suit, rain beating on the fabric like it didn't dare sink in. His hair was damp, darker than usual, and when he lifted his head, his eyes caught the dim light the same way they had caught mine that first day. My heart stuttered. "Need a ride?" he asked. His voice was casual, like he was asking about the weather. But there was an edge beneath it, something dangerous, something that made my pulse spike instantly. I hesitated, my fingers tightening around the broken umbrella. Rain dripped down my sleeve, cold and uncomfortable, grounding me in reality. I shouldn't. The words felt weak even as I said them. "You will," he said simply. No argument. No persuasion. No pressure. Just certainty. And that was it. The decision happened somewhere between his calm tone and the way he was already turning toward the car, like he knew I would follow. I was climbing into the passenger seat before my mind caught up, shaking, soaked, and terrified of how much I wanted him to be right. The door closed with a soft thud, shutting out the rain and the street and every excuse I could have used to stop myself. The city blurred past in rain-soaked streaks almost immediately. Streetlights smeared into gold lines across the windshield. The sound of the wipers filled the silence, steady and rhythmic, too loud and not loud enough all at once. His cologne hit me first. Warm. Intoxicating. Familiar now in a way that startled me. It wrapped around me, settling into my senses, making the enclosed space feel smaller, more intimate. Then his presence. Solid. Overwhelming. Magnetic. I kept my hands folded in my lap, fingers laced together tightly like I was holding myself in place. I stared straight ahead, trying not to brush against him, trying not to notice how close his arm was, how easily it could touch mine if either of us moved even slightly. I noticed anyway. The way his sleeve brushed mine when he shifted gears sent a spark straight through me. I sucked in a quiet breath, hoping he hadn't noticed. He noticed. "You cold?" he asked, glancing at me briefly before returning his eyes to the road. "No," I lied, immediately. He hummed softly, like he didn't believe me but wasn't going to push. The sound settled something inside me and unsettled something else at the same time. Minutes passed. Maybe seconds. Time felt strange, elastic, stretching and snapping without warning. My thoughts raced, then stalled, then raced again. "You know," he said finally, breaking the silence, "I've been watching out for you." My stomach dropped. Hard. "Watching me?" I whispered, the words barely making it past my lips. The idea sent a rush of conflicting emotions through me, alarm, curiosity, something dangerously close to comfort. "Yes," he said. His eyes stayed on the road, but somehow it felt like they were also on me, like he was aware of every shift in my posture, every change in my breathing. Ever since the church. The church. My fingers tightened in my lap. I froze, every instinct screaming at me to pull away, to ask him to stop the car, to get out before this went somewhere I couldn't undo. But my body refused. My lips parted, breath shallow. "Why?" The question came out softer than I meant it to. Not demanding. Not accusatory. Just honest. He didn't answer right away. The silence stretched, thick and tense, filled only by the sound of rain and the steady hum of the engine. Each second that passed made my chest tighter, my thoughts louder. "Say something. Please say something." Then he spoke. Because, he paused, jaw tightening slightly, like he was choosing his words carefully. "I couldn't stop thinking about you." Everything in me shivered. The admission landed heavier than anything he could have said. Not dramatic. Not poetic. Just raw, unguarded truth. Fear and longing collided inside me, so strong I almost couldn't breathe. My chest felt too tight, my skin too warm. I stared out the window, rain tracing uneven paths down the glass, trying to ground myself. I wanted to tell him this was a bad idea. I wanted to ask him what he meant by watching out for me. I wanted to pretend this was nothing more than a coincidence, a shared moment that would fade with time. But my heart betrayed me, beating faster, louder, as if it already knew the answer to questions I was too afraid to ask. And the car kept moving forward, rain blurring the world outside, carrying us somewhere I wasn't ready to name. The days that followed were unbearable. Not dramatic in a way anyone else would notice. No explosions. No confrontations. Just a slow, quiet unraveling that happened entirely inside me. The kind that looks calm from the outside and feels like suffocating on the inside. Every glance felt loaded. Every accidental brush of fingers sent my pulse racing. Every whispered word in the empty corners of the church built the tension higher, tighter, until it felt like I was wound too tightly to breathe properly. I hated how much I wanted him. Hated how my body reacted before my mind could stop it. How my breath would hitch when he appeared. How my heart betrayed me every single time he stood too close. My thoughts screamed danger, warning me that this was not safe, not wise, not something I could afford to lose myself in. And yet, my body didn't listen. Some days, I would catch him watching me from across the church, his expression unreadable, his presence heavy even from a distance. Other days, he would pretend not to notice me at all, which somehow hurt more. Why was this happening? Why him? Why now? I tried to tell myself it was temporary. A moment. A passing attraction fueled by proximity and circumstance. But moments weren't supposed to feel like this, like a constant hum beneath my skin, like anticipation wrapped in fear. Then came the hotel incident. Even thinking about it made my chest tighten. It was supposed to be routine. Ordinary. Predictable. I worked at a small bakery, the kind that stayed open late for deliveries and last-minute orders. That night was no different, or so I thought. I was tired, my feet aching, my mind already halfway home. I didn't expect anyone to be there. Certainly not him. The hotel lobby was quiet, polished marble floors reflecting the warm glow of overhead lights. The air smelled faintly of citrus cleaner and something expensive. My footsteps echoed softly as I stepped inside, already planning to drop off the delivery and leave as quickly as possible. Then I saw him. Waiting. Leaning casually against the marble column near the front desk, arms crossed, posture relaxed like he owned the space. His eyes lifted the second I entered, dark and unreadable, locking onto mine with an intensity that made my stomach drop. My heart slammed against my ribs. "You're late," he said softly, almost teasing. The sound of his voice in that space, quiet, intimate, sent a rush through me that I wasn't prepared for. My throat went dry instantly. I had work, I stammered, hating how unsteady I sounded. He smiled faintly, just enough to let me know he heard the nervousness I was trying to hide. "Work," he repeated, pushing himself off the marble and stepping closer. The distance between us shrank too fast. I could feel the heat radiating from him, subtle but undeniable. His cologne wrapped around me, warm and familiar, stirring something dangerous in my chest. "You always work," he continued, voice low. "Never rest." He tilted his head slightly, studying me in a way that made me feel seen and exposed all at once. "But why are you here alone?" The question hit harder than I expected. I swallowed hard, my fingers tightening around the delivery bag. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to turn around, to say this was none of his business. But I stayed. My feet refused to move. I started, then stopped. Why was I here alone? Because I needed the money. Because I didn't like asking for help. Because independence was easier than vulnerability. Because admitting I needed someone felt like weakness. Because I have to, I whispered finally. The words came out softer than I meant them to. Honest in a way I rarely allowed myself to be. His eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but in thought. Like he was weighing something. Measuring me. "Because you want to see me?" he asked. The question hit me like a physical blow. My throat went completely dry. I opened my mouth, closed it again. My hands were shaking now, betraying everything I was trying to keep hidden. I didn't even know how to finish the sentence. No version of the truth felt safe to say out loud. He let out a quiet laugh, low and almost fond. "You're impossible." Before I could react, he reached out and took my hand. The contact sent a jolt through me so sharp it stole my breath. My body betrayed me instantly, melting into him like I was made of paper and he was the fire I couldn't resist. I hated how natural it felt. How right. For a moment, the world narrowed to just that, his hand holding mine, the steady warmth of his presence, the way my heart raced as if it had been waiting for this exact moment. That night changed everything. Not because of what happened, but because of what couldn't be undone after. We didn't speak of what was happening between us. We didn't define it, didn't name it, didn't dare admit it out loud. Doing so felt too dangerous, like acknowledging it would make it real in a way neither of us was ready for. Instead, we lived in the in-between. Every stolen moment became heavier with meaning. Every touch felt like a risk. Every look lingered just a second too long. I told myself I could walk away whenever I wanted, but the truth was, I didn't want to. I couldn't. The complications came quickly. He was complicated. That much was impossible to ignore. There were things about his life he never explained, details he carefully avoided. I noticed the way people reacted to him, respect mixed with something darker. Fear, maybe. Caution. His world wasn't mine. There were rules I didn't know, unspoken boundaries I kept bumping into. Enemies I didn't see but could feel lingering at the edges of our moments. And yet, he protected me in ways that made my heart ache with both gratitude and fear. He walked me home more often. He watched the street before letting me step outside. He listened when I talked, even about things that seemed small. One evening, under the soft glow of street lamps, the air cool and quiet, he suddenly stopped walking. I almost collided with his back. "What is it?" I asked, my voice instinctively lowering. "Someone's following you," he murmured. The words sent a shock through me. His eyes scanned the shadows, his body subtly shifting, positioning himself just slightly in front of me without making it obvious. My pulse spiked. What? Who? "I don't know yet," he admitted, tension sharp in his jaw. His voice stayed calm, but his body was alert, ready. "But you can't be alone anymore." The simplicity of the statement terrified me. And just like that, my safe, ordinary world shattered. The routines I relied on no longer felt secure. The streets I'd walked 100 times felt different. Smaller. Darker. I found myself glancing over my shoulder more often, listening more closely to footsteps behind me. And worse than the fear was the truth I didn't want to admit, I relied on him now. I needed him. I craved the way his presence steadied me, even as it terrified me. The way he made the world feel both more dangerous and strangely safer at the same time. I knew this couldn't stay simple. I knew I was already too deep. And yet, when he walked beside me, when his shoulder brushed mine under the glow of the street lamps, my heart whispered the same dangerous thought over and over again. Don't let go. Days later, we were caught in the rain. Not the gentle kind that cools the air and makes everything feel romantic. This was loud, relentless, soaking through clothes in seconds, pounding against the pavement like the city itself was angry. We ran without thinking, breathless and laughing in that quiet, disbelieving way people do when they don't know what else to do with the moment they're in. We ducked under an awning just in time, the metal rattling above us as rainwater cascaded down the edges in thick, uneven streams. The world beyond it blurred, cars rushing past, headlights streaking through the downpour, voices muffled and distant. For a second, neither of us spoke. We stood too close, shoulders nearly touching, the air between us charged and warm despite the cold rain. I could feel my pulse in my throat, my chest rising and falling too fast. The scent of wet pavement mixed with his cologne, grounding and dizzying all at once. His hand found mine. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. Just there. His fingers slipped into mine as if they'd always known where to go, squeezing once, firm, deliberate, reassuring. The simple intimacy of it stole my breath more than any grand gesture ever could. "You're reckless," he whispered. The word wasn't accusing. It wasn't harsh. It sounded almost fond, spoken so softly it felt like it belonged only to us. "I am?" I asked, heart racing. I turned my head slightly, enough to look at him without fully facing him. Rain dripped from the edge of the awning, creating a steady rhythm that matched the pounding in my chest. "You are," he said. His lips brushed my ear when he leaned closer, close enough that I felt his breath against my skin. A shiver raced down my spine before I could stop it. And I like it. The admission hit me harder than I expected. I wanted to tell him to stop. The words formed in my mind instantly, sharp and urgent. I wanted to remind him of everything stacked against us, his world, my fear, the danger humming beneath every moment we shared. But the truth pressed heavier than any warning. I didn't want him to stop. I wanted to stay right there under that awning, fingers laced, rain roaring around us like a barrier from reality. I wanted the quiet thrill of being seen, of being wanted in a way that felt dangerous and deliberate. My silence stretched too long. He didn't push. Didn't demand an answer. He just stayed close, hand warm around mine, letting the moment exist exactly as it was. Then the twist came. It didn't announce itself loudly. There was no dramatic confrontation, no warning sign. Just a plain envelope slipped under my door one evening, so ordinary it almost blended into the floor. Almost. I noticed it immediately. Something in my chest tightened the second I saw it. I stood there staring at it for a long moment, keys still in my hand, the hallway too quiet. My hands shook as I picked it up. The paper felt thin. Cheap. There was no name. No return address. I opened it slowly, my breath shallow. Stay away. 2 words. That was all. My heart sank so fast it felt like it dropped out of my body entirely. A cold wave washed over me, starting in my chest and spreading outward. Someone knew. Someone had seen something they weren't supposed to. Someone didn't want us together. The apartment suddenly felt too small, too exposed. I locked the door, checked it twice without meaning to. My thoughts spiraled, colliding with each other in panicked bursts. Who wrote this? How long have they been watching? What else do they know? Sleep didn't come easily that night. Every sound made me flinch. Every shadow felt like it lingered too long. I replayed every moment we'd shared, searching for the mistake, the moment we'd been careless. I confronted him the next day. I didn't plan to. It just happened. The words burned in my chest until they demanded to be said. They know, I said the second I saw him, my voice trembling despite my attempt to stay calm. Someone knows about us. The way his expression changed told me everything before he even spoke. His jaw tightened. His shoulders stiffened. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes, real, unguarded fear. It doesn't matter, he said quietly, stepping closer as if instinctively trying to shield me. I'll protect you. No matter what. The certainty in his voice should have comforted me. Instead, it made everything feel heavier. More real. More dangerous. The threat only made my feelings spiral further. The forbidden nature of it all, the constant edge of fear, the intensity that wrapped itself around every moment we shared, it was intoxicating. Terrifying. Impossible to walk away from. Every glance became electric. Every accidental touch sent my nerves into overdrive. Every moment felt like a battle between fear and desire, logic and longing. We didn't speak of what was happening. Didn't name it. Naming it felt like crossing a line neither of us could uncross. But the tension was unbearable, humming beneath every conversation, every silence. My thoughts were consumed. Why him? Why now? Why can't I stop thinking about him? The questions followed me everywhere, into work, into sleep, into the quiet moments when I was alone with my thoughts. I tried to imagine my life without him, and the image felt hollow, unfinished. Then came the moment I'd feared. We were alone in a quiet hotel suite, the lights dim, rain beating against the windows in a steady, relentless rhythm. The city outside was reduced to distant noise, blurred and unreachable. I stood near the door, bag still on my shoulder, every instinct screaming at me to leave. to turn around while I still could. I should go, I said, though my feet didn't move. He didn't answer immediately. He just watched me, something intense and unreadable flickering behind his eyes. Then he stepped closer. My body refused to listen to reason. He leaned in, his hand brushing my cheek, thumb warm against my skin. "You're mine," he whispered. The words sent a shock through me. Possessive. Dangerous. Honest. I wanted to pull back. I wanted to scream that this was too much, that we were crossing lines we couldn't uncross. Instead, I melted into him. My hands traced his chest without thinking, memorizing the warmth, the strength beneath my palms. Every rule I'd set for myself dissolved in his presence. Every warning faded into the background. The next day, the world intruded again. Enemies. Whispers. Warnings that never came directly but hovered in the air all the same. The danger was always there, just beneath the surface, reminding us that this wasn't a fantasy we could live in forever. But we couldn't stay apart. Every stolen meeting felt like a quiet act of rebellion. Every glance in the bakery carried meaning no one else could see. Every shared silence spoke louder than words ever could. Finally, one night, under a quiet, rainy street lamp, he took my hands. The rain fell gently this time, soft and persistent, drumming lightly against the pavement. Not a storm, not a gale that would have forced us to retreat, but a steady, unrelenting whisper from the sky, as if the heavens themselves were observing and holding their breath. Each droplet that landed on my skin, soaking my hair and the shoulders of my coat, sent a shiver down my spine. It was intimate, the rain, like the world had thinned around us, leaving only us, the lamp, and the muted sound of water falling in a rhythm almost synchronized with our heartbeats. The street was empty, devoid of cars, pedestrians, the usual bustle that filled the city. The quiet was absolute, pressing close in that way that made the smallest noises, our breathing, the faint rustle of fabric, the soft slap of wet shoes against concrete, resonate sharply. The glow of the lamp bathed us in a golden halo, stretching our shadows along the glistening street, merging them into one long, intertwined shape. It felt cinematic. Impossible. Like the world had paused just for this. He stepped closer, closing any space that still lingered between us, and my chest thudded so loudly I was sure he could hear it. He didn't speak immediately. He let his hands find mine and hold them there, fingers curling over mine with a tenderness that belied everything I had learned to fear about him, everything I had assumed about the danger surrounding him. The heat from his palms seeped into mine, the warmth traveling up my arms in a rush that left goosebumps in its wake. "I can't pretend anymore," he said, his voice raw, layered with urgency and emotion I hadn't heard before. It wasn't the controlled, quiet calm he usually wore like armor. No. This voice was unfiltered, sharp edges and tender undertones colliding together, exposing a vulnerability he rarely allowed anyone to see. "I don't want to." I stared at him, unable to speak at first. My heart hammered in my chest, thudding in a chaotic rhythm that seemed louder than the patter of the rain around us. Every beat was a drum announcing my awareness, my fear, my yearning. I could feel it in my ears, a high-pitched thrum that made the world around me fade further into the background. "But, your world. The danger." I began, my voice breaking mid-word. The hesitation wasn't just from breathlessness, but from the sheer weight of acknowledging everything I had tried to suppress, the risks, the unknown, the darkness surrounding him. "I don't care," he interrupted, his voice fierce yet tender at the same time, like a storm and a lullaby rolled into one. "All I care about is you." The statement struck me like lightning, bright, undeniable, impossible to ignore. My legs weakened beneath me, not from fear, but from recognition. Recognition of something I had been denying, something I had tried to name and resist, but that had existed between us from the very first glance. The raw, unfiltered truth of it was terrifying and intoxicating in equal measure. For the first time, I let myself believe it. Not just a casual belief, but a full-bodied surrender. A plunge into something I had skirted around, tested at the edges, but never allowed to exist fully. I let myself fall completely, without restraint, without contingency plans, without escape routes carefully plotted in my mind. Every careful, rational thought that had attempted to control my actions dissolved in the intensity of the moment. We didn't need words after that. Words would have felt clumsy, insufficient, unable to encapsulate the surge of emotion, desire, and relief crashing over us. Instead, there was closeness. There was presence. A tangible, silent acknowledgement of everything that had passed between us, everything unspoken yet understood. His forehead rested against mine, the warmth pressing gently against my temple. Our breaths mingled in the chilled, rain-laden air, each inhale and exhale a silent conversation between us. I could feel the subtle rise and fall of his chest, the cadence of his heartbeat merging with my own erratic rhythm, and for a suspended moment, nothing existed outside this connection. The rain continued its quiet fall around us, punctuating the silence in a soft, almost reverent applause, as if approving this surrender, this acknowledgement, this shared intimacy. The city faded. Streetlights blurred into muted halos. Buildings, shops, and passing cars became indistinct, background noise swallowed by the rhythm of the rain and the focus of this closeness. The world narrowed until it was only him and me, the two of us standing on wet concrete under a street lamp, danger and longing intertwined in such a way that I could no longer separate one from the other. I realized I didn't want to separate them. Danger had always been part of him, part of us, a flavor that made every stolen touch, every glance, every heartbeat more intense. And longing was my own reflection in him, mirrored and amplified, undeniable and urgent. And in that moment, I understood something. Love isn't safe. Not in the conventional sense. Not in a way that guarantees comfort, stability, or predictability. Love like this, love like ours, was untamed, reckless, and unrestrained. It carried with it fear, but fear didn't diminish the intensity, it sharpened it. Every moment of hesitation, every thought of what might happen if we were discovered, every pulse of adrenaline that surged through my veins heightened the significance of the connection. Love isn't simple. It doesn't follow neat patterns or adhere to clear rules. It doesn't ask permission, doesn't wait for timing to be perfect. Love like this crashes in, sudden and complete, uninvited but impossible to resist. It leaves you dizzy, unbalanced, craving more even as it terrifies you. Love isn't ordinary. I had lived a life attempting ordinariness. Rules, schedules, routines, predictable moments, comfortable boundaries. But none of it had prepared me for this. For him. For the way he made the world shrink, the way he made me acutely aware of my own heartbeat, my own fragility, my own desire. Nothing mundane could have ever led to this moment, under this gentle rain, with his hands wrapped around mine and his forehead pressed to mine as if to confirm I existed in the same space, the same storm, the same breath. But it is everything. Everything. And I knew it, with a clarity that made my chest ache, my stomach twist, and my mind reel. This awareness wasn't fleeting. It was a stark, vivid truth, a revelation that would remain etched into every corner of my memory, carved into the pattern of my heartbeat, into the lingering warmth of my fingertips. I knew I would never forget the way my heart felt, the sharp, chaotic drum of it, the moment I fainted, the moment he caught me, the moment I realized that life without him would be unbearable. Each memory of him catching me, holding me upright, steadying me through panic, had become a blueprint for what safety, what belonging, felt like. And now, under this rain-soaked street lamp, the feeling crystallized into a new understanding. I didn't need safety. I didn't need predictability. I didn't need rules. Some people call it reckless. A fleeting smile brushed my lips despite the storm of emotions raging inside me. To the outside world, yes, it might have been madness. A foolish surrender. A lapse in judgment. Dangerous, unwise, unsustainable. I could hear their whispers, their judgment, their warnings echoing faintly in the back of my mind. But none of that mattered here, not in this suspended, luminous moment under the rain and the lamp, not when his hands held mine and his gaze anchored me so fully I felt I could breathe again. I call it home. because in that closeness, in that raw, unguarded surrender, I had found something I didn't even know I was searching for until it existed, the undeniable, complete presence of someone who made the chaos of the world dissolve, who made danger and longing and desire coalesce into a singular, overwhelming, intoxicating truth. A place where fear and warmth, risk and comfort, trembling and certainty could exist simultaneously. I had never known I could feel so alive, so grounded, so utterly seen. I didn't want to break the spell, didn't want the moment to end, didn't want to return to the ordinary rhythm of the world outside the street lamp's glow. The rain continued to fall softly, a persistent reminder that the world still existed beyond us, but for now, it was optional. Optional. And I realized that maybe, for the first time, choosing him, choosing us, wasn't about defiance, or danger, or the thrill of forbidden longing. It was about acknowledgement. About recognition. About finding, finally, a place that felt like home despite everything else that screamed it couldn't exist. Even the sound of the rain felt like a benediction, as if the universe was quietly celebrating our defiance, our surrender, our courage to feel without restraint, without fear of consequence. I stayed there, eyes locked on his, hands entwined, heart hammering, mind spinning, every sense attuned to the electric reality of us. And in that awareness, I understood fully, finally, completely, that life without him wasn't just undesirable. It was unthinkable. Somewhere between the quiet glow of the street lamp, the soft fall of rain, and the impossibly steady beat of his heart against mine, I knew I had come home.